Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Patti Eddington. Looking forward to our conversation today, Patti.
Thank you. I am very much looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, and we're recording this, ladies and gentlemen, the day before Patti launches her book. So, yeah, this will go out actually on the day that you launch. So it's a big day for you tomorrow, right?
It is. Thank you so much. That's a pleasant surprise. It's been 2 years since my book was accepted for publication, my book about unlocking my adoption records. It's been a long process. And so tomorrow is kind of the culmination, although there's probably less going on tomorrow than there has been every day the last couple of years, but it is a big day for me.
Indeed. Well, good luck with the launch.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk healing.
Right.
What does healing mean to you, Patti?
Well, Simon, if you would have asked me a few years ago about healing, I would have said healing from what? I had, in my opinion, a happy childhood. I knew, as you did, that, there was never a time when I remember being told. I was told early, um, at a young age, that I was not the biological child of my parents. And excuse me, I never I pushed down any questions I had. I innately knew that it probably was not wise to ask. Um, gosh, I'm sorry, a tickle. Um, so I kind of pushed that away. And then a few years ago, I had my adoption records unlocked. I've never had.
Sorry, a little technical glitch there, listeners. We need water, don't we? I've been for the last hour. I've been talking to an adopter who's coming on the show on Thursday, and I didn't. My water had run out, and I had a tickly cough as well. So, where were you? Where you were explaining that you'd thought healing from what? You'd had some questions, but you about the background biological family, but you'd push those down, and then something happened, presumably.
Yeah, my daughter gave me a DNA test in 2017 when she was getting married. She'd had a lot of health issues and had the right to know what if there was maybe something she should know. And I think it was even important that I didn't do it right away. I still put it aside for a year almost. We were moving and she was getting married, and I used those as excuses. But I think it was just that this is kind of a half-formed thought, but I have been considering it lately. I heard someone else talking about this. You know, if people ask me about my adoption, I will always say how grateful I was for my life, and I am. I have wonderful parents. But you don't really ever hear biological children saying, I'm grateful my parents had me. Um, I think that adopted children maybe innately feel that gratitude is something they should express. And I did. And like I say, it's true. I was very, very grateful. But I heard someone talking, an adopted adult, saying, I always had to make everything okay for everybody else. I had to make it okay for my parents and my family. It's great that you adopted me, and this is the best thing that could have happened to me. Even if it's true, it's an obligation biological children don't have. Um, so I did finally do the DNA test and got lots and lots of surprises. And I think that was the beginning of my healing. I began to understand that I did have a right to know um, and answer some of these questions. It was something that I didn't have to apologize for being curious.
Yeah. So, was there I don't know, was there a period of pain that you went through, or was this more just idle kind of curiosity in your head? Was there was the trouble in the north of England, we might have said trouble at the mill, right? Was the trouble at
Okay.
the mill?
I did go through a lot of pain, but it was mostly because of what was in the record. My parents, the adoption records when they came, I did the DNA test, found biological relatives, talked with them, and they told me a story that I could have never imagined. And it did not mesh with the story, the few details that I did have from my early life. And so that's why I had the adoption records unsealed. But it was what was in the records, actually, in my case, that led to a lot of pain. It was based on a one-day visit to my parents. It was called the Report of Investigation. I'd been living with my parents as a foster child for a year, and a court worker, and this was in the early 1960s, visited the house. And, I have no idea how long she was there. It could have been an hour, it could have been an afternoon. And she did little segments of like, this is about the father, this is about the mother, this is the house they live in, and all these funny little notes that we would never think would be in an adoption record. Mrs. Eddington is blonde and petite and tends to be plump. And my father is a handsome man. And I was a talkative little girl, and it came down to the very last paragraph. And it basically, I hate to give away too much of the book, but it said that my parents, who'd waited 17 years to have a child, 16 by this time, didn't know if I was the right child for them. And it dropped me to my knees, because these were my parents, the people who loved me. And, my dad helped me do chin-ups and learn how to, when I couldn't to pass the American presidential fitness test, I couldn't do them. And so he put up a pole and, he helped me learn how to do them. And my mother was always on my side. And to look back through all those decades and see those words that they're not sure I was the right child for them, that's what caused me a lot of pain. A lot of my healing, I would think, came after that. First, it was great that I finally realized I could ask the questions. And second, I did get some resolution to why they said that. And that was very healing for me.
Yeah. So the 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 conflict between the two stories, the pain of I they weren't sure, lack of certainty, and then the resolution about what changed for them. Was it about what changed for them?
Not really. They were lying to the court. There was something else going on in their life at the time, and they realized they could not let the court know that, so they lied and said, we're not sure. They were buying time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was, I didn't realize that for many, many weeks anyway. I'm trying to think exactly when I did realize that my cousin found a scrap of paper that said, wait a minute, this is what really happened. And then I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Um, but so that period of time was extremely stressful, realizing I would never have written a book had I not had that piece of paper. It would have indicated to me that my parents, Jim and Millie Eddington, were not the people I always thought they were. And finding that piece of paper helped me heal as well. I have come to realize I just don't know a lot of adoption stories. I was an adopted person who didn't really pay much attention to it until I got older. I think that's probably a little unusual, but I was real good at squashing things down.
Yeah. How had this how was your self-esteem growing up? Were you in a fairly good place that on that subject?
Um, it wavered. It changed. Pictures of me when I was a toddler in my parents' home were very precocious. The um, court records, the visitors, the court officer that visited my parents' house said how outgoing and charming and talkative I was. Um, and then I suffered growing up through the middle years. I remember, and I can tie it back to one thing. I went through the first years of my life kind of like, this is just a different way of being. You know, I have dark hair and my friend's a blonde. And then I was playing on a swing set with a girl that I'd never played with before. And we were swinging and dragging our kids. And I was very excited because my uncle was getting married the next day. And I was telling her I was going to a rehearsal dinner and how exciting it was going to be. And I could have a kitty cocktail. And she said, you know, this is really fun. I like talking to you. I like playing with you. I'm like, yeah, me too. You're really nice. And she said, you're nice too. But I'm so surprised because my mother told me not to play with you because you are not living with your real parents. And
Right.
that was the, it was like the first time I ever thought I'm different. And I was 10 or 11 by that time. And I had a hard teacher that year. It's in my book. I had a teacher who did not care for me and made my life very uncomfortable. Um, I was going through an early puberty. I was unattractive, and my self-esteem suffered then. My mother and father were so much older than other kids' parents. My mother was 40 when I was born. Is that right? 44.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and so they were of the greatest generation, and I was growing up in the 1970s, you know, and um, she was very strict. And I always put my feelings of discomfort down to having older parents and having parents that children should be seen and not heard. Um, you know, I always felt, I remember thinking, I can't wait till I can be heard. And so I always put it down to that. I never really thought that I was uncomfortable because of the adoption, but I think it was also because of the adoption and that I felt like I was so different, especially after that little girl pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
And then I recovered in high school.
Sorry?
Then I recovered in high school. I kind of bounced back and you know, felt a lot better about my life and things, but my middle years were certainly uncomfortable.
Yeah. Resilience is big for us, isn't it? Resilience,
Yeah.
bouncing back.
And like I said, that thing of gratitude and always feeling like we have to be just so. I don't know if that's across the board, but I certainly do. I feel like I have to please everyone and I have to be, you know, just so. And then that brings with it other feelings from people. Your life is so great. And it's like, no, my life is like anybody's life. Um, but I think and I don't know about you, do you feel like you worked real hard to have people like you?
Sometimes I I don't know. I felt that I, I felt cut. I felt cut by other people's comments to me, especially when they say something nasty
Mhm.
like what that girl said to you on the swing. But I've never really had anything like that said to me. I've not had adoption based insults, shall we say, from other people. I've been told that I should be grateful about I should be grateful about business or being, because I took over part of the family business. Um, and I've been told that I should be grateful about that, and that people don't. It's tricky taking on that. It's tricky taking on a family business, and there were some changes before I took over one of the businesses that made it a very tricky time, and people have just thought it's an easy ride. Well, working for my dad wasn't an easy ride. It wasn't. He was a tricky guy to work for everybody. It wasn't just me that he made life tricky for. Um, so people have underestimated that. But yeah, I haven't had any. I don't think I've had any adoption sort of insults, or I've not been told that I should be grateful for being adopted. And I don't know. I don't know whether I've just forgotten those, or I've never had them. I think we are pretty resilient
Yeah.
as adoptees. I've just finished being interviewed by Lisa Ann, who runs the Wandering Tree adoption podcast, fellow adoptee, and we talked a lot about resilience. We talked a lot about resilience, and I had something about resilience that really stuck with me a few years ago. So some people make out that resilience is something like that you grow by going to the gym, like going to the gym. So this, when people are trying to sell us stuff, they say, well, you're not resilient. Yeah, I used to feel like you did. I used to feel like you did, Simon. I didn't used to feel resilient until I learned, the 3 steps to resilience. And if you spend time and money with me, then I will show you how to develop these. It's like going to the gym. You have to do, and uh, and I don't think resilience is like that at all. I think resilience is something that we don't appreciate. We don't appreciate our own resilience until we do. It's something that we see through going through adversity, and we don't think that we're going to be able to cope, and somehow we do cope. And so those tough times reveal the resilience that was always there, but we just didn't know we had it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So it's innate. I think it's innate. You just think. So I last year I was working with a therapist, and she seemed to be kind of withdrawing from me. She seemed like she was. It's a long story, but she feels. But I thought that she was going to ditch me, and I felt insecure in that moment. And then a bit later on, she did stop working for me, and it didn't bother me at all. So the thought of her ceasing working with me scared me, but the actuality, it didn't. I was quite able to cope, and I think our minds play really, really funny tricks with us, telling us that we're not going to be able to get through this stuff. I'm thinking about you, and you reading in this file that your adopted parents weren't sure about you, and I'm thinking, well, that would feel like the world disappearing from under your feet, would it? I mean, did it?
It felt like 60 years down the drain. I couldn't believe it. The envelope came on a Friday afternoon, and interestingly, let me think. No, that would have been about 2018, I guess. Eh, 2019. Um, I had my records. I went to the courthouse in January 2020. So you know what's coming. They came in February. We immediately went on our spring vacation, and it gave me a little time to take that in. And then we came back and everything changed anyway. So I had a lot in my head. Yeah, it shot me down. Something like you just said, it was like except I could have never dreamed that my parents were unsure. First of all, I knew their story. They had been married in 1946. Mom had a hysterectomy shortly thereafter. They knew they couldn't have children. They wanted children desperately. They moved out to the country from Detroit and began almost immediately. They went to the courthouse in 1955, I think, and filled out an adoption application. And that was in the envelope too. And in my mom's handwriting, and it's all the information about my parents and the house we lived in, how many acres, and my dad raised beef cattle. And that was poignant to me. I'm a vegetarian, and it would say, Mr. Eddington has 17 head of cattle. And the next, they'd cross it out and say 15 head of cattle. I'm like, oh no. But
Oh,
um yeah. Um so all of that was really interesting. But mom would stop in at the courthouse like every few months, and they would put a little note in the margin. They say now they'll take a girl or a boy, and they'll take up to older age. They were all the time trying to increase their chances. So I knew how much it meant to them. And then to see that even after I'd lived with them, for they took in foster children. I was a foster child. They'd had a failed adoption before me, a little boy whose mother got in the way, and the court actually sent him out of state, and it broke my parents' hearts. And so after all that, all those years, the story in my head was mom and dad wanted something so bad, and I was their dream. And that's how they treated me. Then to see in writing, they're not sure.
yeah,
It could only be about me, right? Except it wasn't. But yeah, that was a toughie. I'd felt rejected before in life, of course, but I didn't even know what to do with that bit of information. That was a hard, hard thing to see.
yeah,
And you know what? I'm sure, but they never dreamed closed adoptions were something that's just the way adoption was then. Um, I'm sure, and my guess is they never saw what they wrote. This was typed
yeah,
and mimeographed or whatever. My guess is my parents never got a copy of that. They probably didn't do that. They probably never saw those words on paper. And they probably thought one person or two people would see that. They never dreamed I would see that eventually.
yeah.
But yeah, not the easiest time in my life for sure.
So there's something quite profound about this, I think, in the fact that we've got all this we've got all this evidence. You've had 60 years of thinking one way, experiencing life one way, and the truth is that the truth is the truth, right? And yet this suddenly this idea comes in, and it's so strong. The little the however many, the two or three, four, five words
Mhm.
come in, and they're so strong that they somehow manage to wipe out 60 years of thoughts to the other way. It's
Yeah, my
amazing.
parents were alive a long time. They were older when they adopted me, but they both died at 91. So I was 50 by the time the second parent died. So all those decades of knowing, one thing and then hearing something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I- when I was maybe in my early 20s, my husband and I went back to my hometown. My parents were still alive. There was a celebration that I don't know if you have Lions Club in
uh,
England. So my dad was big into service. My parents both were. They belonged to all kinds of organizations, and he was a charter member of our little town's Lions Club. And they would have a festival every year. They called it the Homecoming, and there would be, Ferris wheels and cotton candy and games. And the Lions made their own games. They didn't have, the run-of-the-mill games. So my dad had designed this game, and I always loved to play it. It was called roll a score. You rolled a ball down a chute, and you had to get a certain score, and then either below or above, and you won a prize. And I remember so vividly, I was probably 22 or 23, going back to this festival, which I'd always loved, which has always been a safe spot for me. And my dad wasn't behind the game this time, but another lion was. And he gave me my 6 balls for a quarter or whatever. And he said, "Hey, wait a minute. I know you. You're that girl. You're that girl that lives out there with the Eddingtons." I don't think I've ever been so shocked in my life. And I said, "I'm their daughter." And he looked completely befuddled. Um, to see how other people saw me. And here it was a small town, everybody knew everybody. It made me feel like, wait, no one ever thought I really belonged. I didn't really belong. I was just that girl that lived out there with the Eddingtons. And it didn't happen often. That's probably why I remember the girl on the swing set and why, but every once in a while it would just kind of, and all I always thought is that people were trying to put me back in my place.
Yeah. It's as if it's as if the because I've got those moments as well, and it's I don't it's this I can't I'm struggling for words, but it's like has the 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 comment on the swing, the comment at the homecoming, the comment in the file. It's like it's undermined. It's kind of like it's undermined. Has it been something that it's like being a drip fed? It's like a drip fed idea, and then it blows it blows us away. I'm thinking the same with me and the teddy bear moment, and she didn't love me,
Yeah,
keep me. It's almost as if there's that moment when bump the our insecurity comes into stunning focus,
perfect.
and then maybe it's what people call coming out of the fog, right? Maybe it's our coming out of the fog moment, and then if that isn't challenged, right, then that becomes the norm. That becomes our new normal, unless the belief is busted. It's there's something really profound here for me, and I don't know whether I don't are you I don't know how well I'm
Oh,
explaining it.
damn I know you're
Yeah,
doing a good job. Yeah, no,
and
definitely.
and you know, thankfully it was blown away for you.
Yeah, that is true.
It was blown away for you. It's like our it's a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, this belief thing, right? So I saw something from Gabor Mate saying the feeling of not feeling enough isn't a feeling, right? It's not. We call it a feeling. I don't feel like I'm enough, but it's not a feeling. We feel it as a feeling, but it's not. It's a belief.
Interesting. Yeah, I see that. I can see that.
I don't, whatever I do, do you know what I mean? So this people pleasing thing that obviously is so common amongst us, right? Amongst us as adoptees. Yeah, I don't. I never feel I'm enough. I feel that I'm putting everybody's agenda first. I'm shying away from conflict. I just don't feel that I'm enough. And it's a feeling is something like anger or insecurity or something far more it's more tangible. It's more tangible. It's not theoretical. And this difference between believing that you're not feeling enough is one thing, but it actually means that we don't believe we're enough. And I'm laboring the point here because how does a belief change? A belief changes when we see it's not true anymore. And then the belief's gone. So it's about insights. It's about a shift in our belief. That's what changes. That's what changes. And so I had this belief. I had this anger towards my birth mother. And I saw this teddy bear as a consolation prize from a woman that didn't love me enough to keep me. And then 8 years later, I get the correspondence. I get the correspondence that totally refutes that. Mm-hmm. And it becomes clear that the teddy bear was not an effing consolation prize. It was a symbol of her love. Mm-hmm. And that blows the wrong belief completely out of the water.
I'm so glad that happened that way. I loved reading that story. Yeah, I think when I was a young journalist, I was only maybe in 24. I was working at a newspaper in Holland, Michigan, and a reporter for the Associated Press knew my story, and she was adopted. And she was doing a series on adoptees. I don't remember why, and she came to me and she wanted to interview me, which was weird because I was on the other side of, for the first time, I was on the other side of that. And I must have said, I don't remember what I said. I only remember what she said. I must have told her I didn't have any curiosity. I was happy. I was a happy person and I didn't care. And I was doing well. She did not obviously have the same feelings about it. And she said, I don't believe you. For every adopted person, the first thing that ever happened to us is we were rejected. And I can't believe you don't have stronger feelings about that. And I thought, well, I don't know my story. I don't know, I told myself a narrative for years that was my mother was a beautiful college student who had an affair with her English professor. It was not that way at all. But I didn't know the story and I didn't assume. And I didn't feel rejected when I was growing up. I had these couple incidents that were a little strange, but I felt very loved. My families were very caring and big families on both sides. So, but the rejection thing, I've come to learn she wasn't wrong just because I didn't think I felt it. I think that's one of the things that has driven me to, well, take the book. It's gotten great reviews. Kirkus, which, can be a little cranky, loved it, and Book Life loved it. And lots of people, oh my goodness, just have said the nicest things, but there have been a few who don't like it. Who do you think I think about? And I know that's human nature as well. Just, I don't know what the weight is. Is it just because we're human that we go right to the people who don't like something we did or said? Or is it because, wait a minute, here I'm in danger again of someone rejecting me? I don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
Me neither. But we can't please all the people all the time.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And there is what's the truth? Is it a fantastic book or is it a poor book or is it somewhere in between? And I'm going to go with that. I think it's a pretty good book, but but we can't just say, oh, this is true, because everyone is of different opinion. But it just would be helpful not to always go to the negative and say, oh, no, the people who are rejecting me or some part of me are right. It would be nice to be able to bring that a little bit, and say, can't please all the people all the time.
Yeah.
But something I'm working on.
Yeah. What helps us see that we're enough?
The reflection in the people that we love's eyes, I think. I know my family loves me and I know I love them. And, they'll call me out in my bull crap or whatever, but also then they're just also very complimentary when I've done something well. I know that I try, every time I think a bad thought about myself, I try to go say something nice to somebody else. That helps, I think, to give love to other people. Um, I think we know we're good. Uh, I don't really have a great answer for that, but that's how I do it.
Yeah.
I think that's how I know it.
Have you heard this idea that we are actually we are love? Have you heard that? We are love.
Yeah, oh, I like that. Yeah. I one time heard something, and it's a little different, but also it's the same. My mother, because she was so much older, and she was a very pragmatic and stoic woman. She loved me. It wasn't until my parents got into their 70s that we began ending phone conversations with "I love you." But I always knew it was there. I read an article or something one time, maybe around Mother's Day, which is coming up, and it says when you've lost your mother, sometimes you have to be your own mother. You have to be the one who gives that um to yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean it comes from a woman who birthed you or raised you. Sometimes you're your own mother. Sometimes you find mother in a friend. And I think that's nice that we are love. I
Yeah,
I, I see the similarities, and I like both of those things very much.
yeah. Have you come across internal family systems? It's a mode of therapy. Have you come across that?
I have not.
Um, the guy that came up with it's called Dick Schwartz. He's a therapist, and he talks about uppercase S self, right? Who we truly are. So he calls it uppercase S self.
Okay.
Other people might call it spirit. Other people might call it consciousness. Other people might call it our non physical identity, the space in which everything occurs. But the uppercase S self it is the parent.
Mm.
Is in the analogy that you just said. So
Right.
in the absence of a parent, we are parenting ourselves. And
Yep.
what Dick Schwartz, this internal family systems guy, means, he means so he means there's the uppercase ourself, and then there's the bits of us, the parts of us that are stuck in time, often to do with trauma, right? So there's the so for think of I'll use an example from my own experience, right? So at 13, I got dropped from the rugby team, and I felt a sting of not good enough, right? I turned away. I felt a sting in my eyes, like I'm going to cry. I turned away from the rest of the kids in this rugby pitch on this rugby pitch because I didn't want to, 13-year-old boy. It isn't cool to be seen crying. You're turning
Right.
away, yeah, and then the uppercase S self, right, the true Simon will can put his arm round the little 13-year-old guy that's not good enough for at rugby in that at that time to be in thing, and and comfort the kid and say, look, it's kind of it's all right, you're okay, um, uh, your rugby skills do not define you. Do you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Did you feel that at the time or? Did you feel any comfort from yourself at the time?
No, did I? Hell, I was crying.
I bet.
I was crying, yeah. And that's what, but that's the little stuck boy of the 13. So the idea of this IFS thing is basically that you go and parent those. You do what you're
I
talking
see.
about. You parent it. So it's not just, but it's a useful thing to do.
Yes, for sure.
A useful thing to do, and we by we're identifying with ourselves with our uppercase S self, right? Not with so we're an adult, right? And we're offering the different parts of ourselves unconditional love.
Yeah. I think it's very helpful to see it that way. I've thought about things different times in my life that were rejection and how I dealt with them. It was kind of a similar story when I was in, must have been seventh grade, I think. I tried out for cheerleading and I could do the splits. That's what I had. I was a little meek, and so I didn't have a great loud voice and I didn't have a great cartwheel. Um, and we had a very small school, and I remember they took 5 girls, I think. And guess who was number 6? And so they came to 6 and 7 and 8 and said, would you like to be a cheerleader for the girls basketball team? You're not going to be a cheerleader for the boys, but you're going to be a cheerleader for the girls. And I think 7 and 8 said, yeah. And I said, no. They just started gymnastics club and I want to be in that. And I have always been proud of that decision. It's like, no, I'm not second best. And whether I didn't think it was a second best thing, but they did, right? To cheer for the girls back then was like, that's second best. Um, and I don't know where I found it in myself, because the other 2 girls seemed to be like, yeah, okay, sure. Thanks. I'm glad I got chosen for something. And so it's kind of nice when you can look back on a few little victories like that and say, I made the right choice. And I did put my arm around myself and say, no, you're better. If you want to do something and someone says you can't do that, but you can do this, you don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
That was one. One
Well,
example.
so the ultimate question would seem to be, how do we see that we're enough? I mean, I made the Thriving Adoptee. I changed the Thriving Adoptees logo to a diamond. That's
Right.
to signify our value and this. I heard this phrase and it from a podcast, and it wasn't an adoption podcast, interestingly. And the lady talked about existential wrongness. Existential wrongness. And I just thought, what if we could see our existential rightness?
That's right. Exactly.
But we have to see it for ourselves, right?
Mhm. I think I feel the most like I'm okay when I'm helping somebody else. Um, it's where the better to give than receive. And I honestly believe that. I had a bad day uh a week or so ago about something, and I don't cry a lot lately, but I did cry that day, and I had just gotten done with this wonderful cleansing sobbing, and I got a text from a friend, and he basically told me something that he had used from my book that helped him. And all of a sudden, I couldn't even hardly remember what I'd been upset about. I think that that made me know I was okay. You know, that I had done something to help somebody else. And that's where I get it. Everyone's different, of course, but that I'll never forget that I was like, wait a minute, what was I so upset about a few minutes ago? This friend said, hey, I wanted to tell you how this affected me.
Yeah.
So that's where I know I am when it, and then I know I'm not so self-directed or inner directed, which we all need to do. We need to be introspective, but I think if we only think about that, then we're not probably being the best we can be.
Yeah.
It's simplistic. It's just the way I think.
So what's cleansing sobbing? You said cleansing sobbing.
Like snotty nose and kind of like all over the place, just absolutely sobbing. And I honestly I can't tell you now what it was about. Um, just but I felt better afterwards. And then when I got my friend's text, I felt even better. And to the point that I forgot what I was upset about. I'm sure it was just a buildup. There's a lot of stress, you know, with releasing a book, and we've got lots of people coming into town, and I've got 3 parties in the next 10 days, and radio interviews and NPR interview and all kinds of stuff that's great. But be careful what you ask for because it's a lot of greatness at one time, and that can kind of build up and make you
Yeah.
feel a little stressy.
Yeah. So the cleansing sobbing did the hard lifting though.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I
Yeah.
highly recommend cleansing sobbing.
Yeah. So the friend the comment from the friend was like the icing on the cake.
It was, and it reminded me that I am loved, I am cared about, and I helped him. You know, and by the way, his as I remember, his text was something he had had a few tears too over something I had said, and then he heard a song, something I'd said in the book, and then he heard a song, and it all came together for him. And he said, I just wanted to let you know this is how what you wrote affected me. And he said I had a few tears, so I guess it doesn't even have to be cleansing sobbing, just a few tears will help.
Yeah. Yeah. So I told you about reading the letter from her birth mother.
Yes.
And that was that was followed by some cleansing sobbing.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah. In the opposite way of my court record, you know, words on paper just and words you never expected, surprises. Um, very affecting.
How did you feel when you got the proof that your parents did love
Um, that I had been validated. Not so much that it was more that I couldn't believe what I had seen in the records. I just couldn't believe I could misjudge people for that long and that much. Um, and the piece of paper then was like, oh, that's actually absolutely what happened. I know it. And so it's just being proven right, I guess, you know, and I felt relief for sure. And then I felt, oh, I can write about this now. I would not have written about it before that little piece of paper. We wouldn't be talking because I wouldn't have let anyone know what was in that report.
you? Yeah. Mm. Feels like a good place to bring it in.
I think so.
So, listeners, as always, I sometimes forget to do this, right? And some people, I got told off last week.
Oh
Um,
no.
there's always links. There's a link to Patti's book in the show notes. There's a link to Patti's website in the show notes. There's a link to socials in the show notes, and there always is. Right. So if I forget to mention that, listeners, it's always there. And the book coming out tomorrow. Have you got any plans to do an audio version of it? Yeah.
I do. This was a pleasant surprise for me. Talk about validation from someone else. I'm an indie author. My book is being published by She Writes Press, which is a wonderful press, and it's all women. But it is an indie press, and so went into the process knowing that if I wanted to do an audio book, that would probably be the expense would be on me. And probably I'd have to go into a studio, and it sounded torturous. But a couple months ago, I did get an offer. Someone bought my rights, and so that is being handled by my publisher. And I don't have a lot of information on when it will be recorded, but it will be out. It's The Girl with Three Birthdays is the name of my book. So, I know that will be coming. I just don't have a date, but I'm very happy about that, and especially happy I don't have to do it myself.
Okay. So when you hear that it's out, can you send me an email, and then and then there'll be a link to it. So I'll add the link to the Audible book to the notes when it's available. So listeners, just if you want to check that out, then have a look in the show notes. If it's not there, you're gonna have to make do with the paperback or the Kindle version or whatever it is in the meantime. Yeah, if you let us know.
I would appreciate that. I'll be sure to let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Patti.
Oh, it was a pleasure talking with you. I enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for all you're doing to bring adoptee issues to the forefront. And I think it's important to let people know what we're thinking.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank,
And what we're
thank,
thinking.
thank.
Take care, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.